Alright, the pylon signifies that we are hopping into game number 2. Ruins of Saros is the map. And in the bottom left, we have the red Protoss player. We have Echo's Probe. And his opponent, spawning up here in the top left-hand corner of the map, the yellow Zerg player representing Team Rude Gaming, it's Petraeus. Sending up 1-0 in this best of 3. I think this best of 3 is in the losers round 5. So he is the losers semifinals, I guess you could call it. The losers finals is going to happen. I still don't know what to call it. It is 3 rounds away from qualifying. The winner of this has to win this match, the next match. Actually, no, it's 4 rounds away from qualifying. The winner of this has to win this match, the next match, the match versus Exile 5's King Kong, and then defeat Cyoris in the grand finals. A very, very long day ahead of them. Well, we got a very fast Nexus coming up from Probe. And it was a hatch first, of course, from Petraeus. Nothing out of the ordinary. But, well, okay, sorry. It's not as fast of a Nexus as I was thinking. I just talked for a very long time at the beginning of the game. But Ruins of Saros is a very strange map sometimes. It's a very, very big map. These are the vertical spawn positions, so it can become a little bit different. There's still a decent walking distance between the two bases. As you can see over here, there's a couple of different pathways you can take as well, which does make for some awkward Zergling run-bys. Maybe you're not entirely prepared, but what I will say about this map is the third expansion is in a nice, cuddled-in little area. This is kind of the place that you want to spawn as a Protoss player, where you can kind of position your army around this-ish area. And of course, keep an eye out for any kind of big run-bys that happen on this right-hand side. But as long as you do that, you pretty much defend your natural expansion. You could expand a little bit into your opponent, and you could take this as a potential later 4th expansion as you start to diversify your area a little bit more. You start to move into an opponent who's maybe getting up lurkers and maybe has the better standing army. It's not so much as it was when you were going for that 3-base play. So this is, I would say, nice positions for Probe to try and even up this series if he wants to. I assume that he wants to. Petraeus gonna continue to bust out whatever he can. Petraeus is also a player that maybe I'm wrong, but I always imagine him as like the player that's never been afraid to throw out cheeky builds. He's got some really, really great macro. Oh my god, does he have some amazingly good macro, this New Zealand Zerg player, but at the same time, I also feel like I've seen him go for some crazy all-ins. I've seen him go for like the crazy mix-up and everything, and that's what really does make me respect Petraeus, especially as a player. It's not just the fact that he can go for that kind of good old macro game, bring it to the super-duper late stages, but it's the fact that he can also mix it in and keep his opponents honest. He's not going to be doing that this game, just making a couple of Zerglings, and oh, +1 melee attacks. Oh, Petraeus, do tell me more. What on earth are you planning? This reminds me of the old days where Zerg players would get up +1 melee attacks because then they could bust down wall-ins quicker, and they would just flood Zerglings with +1 weapons, or +1 melee, and they would kill off the wall-ins much faster than the Protoss players were expecting. And it'd be really, really funny because the Protoss players would run out of force fields, and then they would just lose the +1 melee speedlings. It was the strangest type of build, but I don't know how likely it is we're going to be seeing that. Roach Warren's plopping down behind this. We have a lot of speed Zerglings going to be made. 14 Zerglings, 16 Zerglings on the way. All of the larvae being used on Zerglings, and we might be seeing some being used on Roaches as well. And Probe has no idea. Probe has seen an evolution chamber, which does signify he could be up against, you know, Zergling drops or something. And he's seen the Roach Warren and the 3 bases. I mean, that's a decent amount of information. He comes in with a Warp Prism and the Adept, so he sees a lot of Zerglings. Wait a second, that is way more Zerglings than you should have right now. And this Warp Prism may be a saving grace right now, just because it forces Petraeus to stay at home and defend for a little bit. But now with the Roaches out, I think that this defense is not going to be long for this world. Maybe? How many warp gates are finished up? We have 4 warp gates. That's enough to put on a bit of pressure. It's not enough to do devastating amounts of damage if there are roach reinforcements at home, if there are even a couple of units just left at home. And I would love to see, yeah, just even a couple, like a Zergling here, making sure that no third expansion is being taken. Probe is going up 4 more gateways, getting up Blink, getting up his immortal count, and is preparing for a really big 2-base all-in. And the weird thing is, Petraeus was already gearing up for a lot of aggression, I think, on his own, and is just being kept at home by this Warp Prism harassment, and is going to be prepared for the big aggression, which, of course, Probe sees. So does he decide, does he reconsider, does he decide to, instead of going for the aggression and continuing on with what he was planning, does he just decide to say, hey, I'm going to go for a third expansion? I don't know. Only time will really tell. Warp Prism still meandering around, keeping Petraeus at home and a little bit paranoid as he leaves a handful of units at every single one of these bases. These adepts are so tanky that they can honestly unload and still keep that Warp Prism alive. The Warp Prism gets very, very low in health, but a second Warp Prism was on the way, so Probe is not putting all of his eggs into one basket. And oh god, this is... I'm starting to remember that this is like the most ideal map in the world for a Blink Stalker attack, because this is it. This is normally a great position because you can blink up into the main base right over here, and you can usually put aggression on this third expansion. But Petraeus grabbed this third expansion. I really like that decision for Petraeus. Still, he's going to have to deal with the blink up into the main base and just darting back and forth between the Warp Prism harassment at the third as well as the harassment over here. A lot of these roaches, though, putting on counter aggression. Probe not going to have enough adepts back at home. He's going to have to use some of these warp-ins back at home to deal with the roaches. And at the same time, the adepts are putting on pressure over here. The stalkers are actually on an all-out retreat. He's just retreating on home. There goes any hopes of aggression. I don't know if Probe can afford to do this. He warps in more stalkers back at home. I don't think I like the decision that he pulls back all these units. I can kind of understand why he wants to do it. But was it the best play? Could he have pulled back some of his units, maybe just his immortals and his sentries, and just blunk up into the main base and put on some aggression? I wonder if that would have been a better play. Because now we have a Protoss player sitting on 40 workers, and yeah, he lost some workers, but only 4 or 5 workers. 5 workers go down so far by Petraeus' hand. And now we have another Zergling run by. Oh god, there's no energy for Photon Overcharge. Warping is on cooldown for a little bit. So many probes are going to go down. He pulls the entire army into a complete standstill, even if they are not pulled back. He pulls them to a complete standstill. He stops them from moving across the map in a situation where time is of the essence. I just don't know if this is going to work out. I feel like Petraeus has done way too much damage. Probe literally has to end the game, and he's up against Spine Crawlers. He's up against Corrosive Biles that are going to push him down. Petraeus, I mean, he might lose his third. That's all well and good, but I feel like it's going to be lose a third, but instead, on the other hand, win your entire opponent's natural expansion and main base and all of their tech and all of their warp gates. Oh, Probe, you've got to just make some, you got to do something. He's going to engage directly in at this location. I kind of feel like this is the best option. It may just be to pick up those immortals in the Warp Prism. Use the Blink Stalkers to blink into the main base. You're going to be engaging into these Spine Crawlers otherwise. That's not something that you want to do. Time is, again, of the essence as you wait, even with these Adepts doing some good damage in the main base. This is not the way that you want to do this, because you're just letting your opponent buy time to get up more units, and you cannot warp in any additional units. Every single warp gate, all the pylons that are powering a warp gate have all been taken out, and now we end up seeing Probe go for this, but I feel like this might be a little bit too late. Sentries coming in. Oh man, if he had maybe been able to get a force field off at the ramp, that could have been another way, but even Corrosive Biles would have made it difficult. GG gets called. Oh, that's two sounds like some music. There we go. Petraeus taking victory and taking the series 2-0.